Imagine that everything you were taught about Jesus is only part of the story. Imagine that behind the familiar image of the gentle teacher, the moral guide, the figure shaped by institutions, there exists another Jesus, a hidden Jesus, a misunderstood Jesus, a version so powerful that it had to be buried. What if the difference between the Jesus of the Church and the Jesus of the Gnostics is not just interpretation, but revelation? What if one version teaches you to believe, while the other teaches you to awaken? And what if the truth they hid was not meant to control you, but to free you? Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation is the most important and the most powerful of all. It may change how you see faith, consciousness, and even your own existence. If this kind of knowledge resonates with you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who is searching for deeper truth, and tell me in the comments, which Jesus were you taught to follow? Because today, we begin to uncover a hidden divide that has shaped human consciousness for centuries. The Jesus of the Church is the one most people know. He is the Savior who stands outside of you, the mediator between you and God, the one who asks for faith, obedience, and devotion. His message, as preserved through institutional tradition, emphasizes sin, redemption, and salvation through belief. This version of Jesus became the foundation of organized Christianity. It was systematized, codified, and reinforced through councils, doctrines, and authority structures. Figures like Constantine, in the 4th century, played a crucial role in defining what would be accepted as truth and what would be rejected as heresy. But here is where things begin to shift. Because alongside this official narrative, there existed another stream of teachings, a quieter one, a deeper one that did not disappear, but was deliberately pushed into the shadows. The Gnostic Jesus. Discovered in texts like the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, these teachings reveal a radically different perspective. Scholars such as Elaine Pagels and Hans Jonas have spent decades studying these writings, and what they found challenges everything. In these texts, Jesus does not come to be worshipped, but to awaken. He does not position himself as the only path, but as a guide pointing inward. He speaks not of blind faith, but of direct knowing. Know yourself, and you will know the universe and the gods. This idea, echoed across Gnostic writings, shifts the entire foundation of spirituality from external authority to inner realization. So now the question becomes unavoidable. Why would such teachings be hidden? Why would a message that empowers the individual be labeled dangerous? And what happens when a human being no longer depends on an institution to connect with the divine? Think about it. If the divine is within you, what role remains for control? If salvation is not granted, but realized, what happens to systems built on mediation? This is where the tension between these two versions of Jesus becomes more than theological. It becomes existential. One calls you to follow. The other calls you to awaken. One asks for belief. The other demands transformation. And the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that this was never just about religion. It was about consciousness. Tell me, which path feels more familiar to you? And more importantly, which one feels true? Because in the next part, we are going to uncover the first hidden fracture, the moment when these two visions of Jesus began to diverge, and why one of them had to be silenced. There was a moment in history when the path of Jesus split into two radically different directions. Not in silence, but in conflict. In the first centuries after his death, the teachings attributed to Jesus were not unified. There was no single version, no fixed doctrine, no centralized authority defining what was true. Instead, there were many communities, many interpretations, many voices. Some followed what would later become the institutional church, building a structured system of belief, hierarchy, and external authority. But others followed something far more radical. They followed a path of inner knowing. These were the Gnostics. The word gnosis means knowledge, but not the kind you learn from books or institutions. It means direct experience, inner revelation, a knowing that arises not from belief, but from awakening. For the Gnostics, Jesus was not primarily a figure to be worshipped. He was a revealer, a teacher who came to remind humanity of something it had forgotten, something hidden beneath layers of illusion. According to texts like the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus spoke in paradoxes and riddles, not to confuse, but to provoke awakening. The kingdom of God is within you and all around you. This single statement changes everything, because if the kingdom is already within, then it is not something to be granted in the future. It is something to be realized now. And this is precisely where the tension begins. Because the emerging church could not build structure on something that required no intermediary. It could not sustain authority over individuals who were taught to look within rather than above. So what happened next was not just theological disagreement. It was selection. Certain texts were preserved, others were excluded. Certain interpretations were elevated, others were condemned. By the time of the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century, the foundation of what we now call Orthodox Christianity had begun to solidify. A canon was forming, a narrative was being shaped, and anything that challenged this structure was labeled heresy. Scholars like Bart, D. Ehrman, and Elaine Pagels have shown how these early decisions were not purely spiritual, but deeply influenced by power, unity, and control. Because a unified belief system creates cohesion, but it also creates limitation. Now consider this. What happens when you remove all alternative voices? What happens when only one version of truth is allowed to survive? Over time, it becomes the only truth people know, and everything else is forgotten, or worse, erased. The Gnostic texts did not vanish by accident. They were buried, hidden in jars, sealed away in places like Nag Hammadi, as if someone knew that one day they would need to be found again. And when they were rediscovered in 1945, they revealed something astonishing. A Jesus who speaks not of guilt, but of ignorance. A Jesus who does not demand obedience, but invites awareness. A Jesus who does not separate you from the divine, but reminds you that you have never been separate. So now we must ask a deeper question. Was the message changed to guide humanity, or to contain it? Was it simplified for accessibility, or reshaped for control? And more importantly, if two radically different versions of Jesus existed at the same time, which one reflects the original intention? Because in the next part, we are going to go even deeper into the teachings themselves and uncover what the Gnostic Jesus actually revealed about reality, consciousness, and the illusion that most people never question. What the Gnostic Jesus reveals is not a new religion. It is a shift in perception, because at the center of these teachings, there is a radical idea that overturns everything most people believe about reality. The idea that this world is not what it seems. In several Gnostic texts, such as the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of Philip, there is a recurring theme. Humanity is living in a state of forgetfulness, not because we are sinful, but because we are unaware of our origin, unaware of our true nature, unaware that what we perceive as reality may be only a layer, a veil. According to scholars like Hans Jonas, Gnostic thought describes existence as divided between the visible world and a higher, hidden reality. The material world is not necessarily evil, but it is incomplete. It is a reflection, not the source. And this is where one of the most controversial ideas appears: the concept of the demiurge. In Gnostic cosmology, the demiurge is not the ultimate divine source, but a lesser creator responsible for shaping the material world. This figure is often associated with ignorance, not absolute evil, but limitation. Now think about the implications of this. If the world you see is not the highest reality, then everything you identify with, your fears, your roles, your limitations, may not define who you truly are. And this is exactly what the Gnostic Jesus points toward. He does not come to fix the world. He comes to wake you up from it. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This is not a call to belief. It is a call to realization. A call to uncover something already present within you, something that has been covered, forgotten, ignored. But why would such a message be considered dangerous? Because a person who realizes their inner nature becomes difficult to control. They no longer rely on external validation for meaning. They no longer fear the same threats. They no longer seek salvation from outside, because they understand it as a process of inner awakening. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever felt that something about reality does not fully make sense? That there is more beneath the surface, something you cannot quite explain, but cannot ignore? This intuitive sense is precisely what Gnostic teachings point to. Not as fantasy, but as an invitation. However, the institutional narrative moved in a different direction. Instead of encouraging individuals to question the nature of reality, it emphasized stability, order, and collective belief. Instead of inner exploration, it offered defined answers. And in doing so, it created clarity for many, but also boundaries. So now we stand between two perspectives, one that explains the world, and one that asks you to see beyond it. One that defines truth for you, and one that asks you to discover it yourself. Which one leads to deeper understanding? Which one leads to dependency? And which one leads to freedom? Because in the next part, we are going to uncover how these teachings directly challenge the idea of sin, salvation, and the very foundation of what it means to be human. What if the greatest misunderstanding about humanity is not what we have done, but what we believe we are? In the traditional doctrine of the Church, the human condition is defined by sin. From the very beginning, the narrative tells us that humanity has fallen, that something essential has been lost, and that salvation must come from outside. This idea shaped centuries of belief. It created a framework where the individual depends on forgiveness, on redemption, on something beyond themselves to be made whole again. But the Gnostic perspective turns this entire structure upside down. In Gnostic texts, the problem is not sin. It is ignorance. Ignorance of one's true origin. Ignorance of one's divine essence. Ignorance of the fact that what you are seeking is already within you. According to the Gospel of Truth, often associated with Valentinian Gnosticism and studied by scholars like Elaine Pagels, humanity suffers not because it is condemned, but because it is asleep. And what is needed is not punishment, but awakening. This distinction is not small. It changes everything. Because if the problem is sin, then you must be saved. But if the problem is ignorance, then you must awaken. And these are two completely different paths. One places power outside of you. The other brings it back within. Now consider how this affects the way you see yourself. If you are told that you are fundamentally flawed, you will seek validation, forgiveness, and approval. But if you begin to see yourself as something deeper, something connected to a higher source, something temporarily veiled but not broken, then your entire relationship with life begins to change. You stop asking, "Am I worthy?" And you start asking, "Who am I really?" This is the question the Gnostic Jesus invites you to explore. Not through blind acceptance, but through direct experience. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father." Notice the shift. This is not about becoming something new. It is about remembering something ancient, something that was never lost, only forgotten. But again, we must ask, why would such a message be suppressed? Why replace awakening with obedience? Why emphasize guilt over awareness? Because a person who believes they are broken is easier to guide. But a person who begins to question, to seek, to look within, becomes unpredictable, independent, free. And freedom has always been a complicated concept for systems built on structure. Now reflect on your own experience. How much of what you believe about yourself was taught to you? How much of it have you truly questioned? And what might you discover if you did? Because in the next part, we are going to explore one of the most hidden and misunderstood ideas of all, the true meaning of the kingdom of God, and why its real interpretation changes everything you think you know. What if the kingdom of God was never a place you go to, but a state you awaken to? For centuries, many have been taught to see the kingdom of God as something distant, a reward, a destination reached after death, granted to those who believe, obey, and endure, a future promise. But the Gnostic Jesus speaks of it very differently. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father." This is not a metaphor to be admired. It is a key to be understood. Because if the kingdom is within you, then it cannot be given to you. It cannot be taken from you. It cannot be controlled by any external authority. It must be realized. And this realization is not passive. It requires awareness, presence, a shift in how you perceive yourself and the world around you. Scholars like Marvin Meyer, who translated many of the Nag Hammadi texts, have emphasized that these teachings are deeply experiential. They are not instructions for belief, but invitations to perceive reality differently. Now think about how radical this truly is. If the divine is not separate from you, then the distance you feel is not real. If the kingdom is already here, then what you are seeking is not somewhere else. It is hidden in plain sight. But hidden by what? By distraction, by conditioning, by the constant movement of thought that pulls your attention outward, away from the present moment, away from your own inner awareness. The Gnostic Jesus does not ask you to wait. He asks you to see, to observe, to become conscious of the patterns that shape your perception. And through this awareness, something begins to change. Not the external world, but your relationship to it. You begin to notice that what once controlled you loses its grip. Fear weakens, attachment loosens, and a deeper sense of clarity begins to emerge. This is not mystical in the way many imagine. It is subtle, quiet, but profoundly transformative. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you were fully present, without distraction, without noise, simply aware? And what did you feel in that moment? Was there not a sense of stillness, of completeness, even if only for a brief instant? What if that is the doorway? What if the kingdom is not hidden because it is far away, but because it is too close, too immediate, too simple for the mind to grasp? This is why many overlook it. They are searching for something extraordinary, while ignoring what is already here. But once this realization begins, it cannot be undone. Because you no longer seek the kingdom, you begin to recognize it. And this changes everything. Because in the next part, we are going to uncover one of the most powerful and controversial ideas of all, the true meaning of salvation, and why its original message may have nothing to do with what most people believe. What if salvation was never about being rescued, but about remembering? In the traditional narrative of the Church, salvation is often described as something granted, a gift given through faith, a divine intervention that lifts the individual from a fallen state into grace. It is something you receive, something external. But the Gnostic Jesus presents a completely different vision. In Gnostic texts, salvation is not an event. It is a realization, a shift in awareness, where illusion is seen for what it is and truth is no longer hidden. In the Gospel of Philip, it is written, "Those who say they will die first and then rise are in error. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die they will receive nothing." This is a profound statement. because it suggests that awakening is not something that happens after death. It happens now, or not at all. The resurrection, in this perspective, is not merely physical. It is symbolic of transformation, a movement from unconsciousness to awareness, from identification with the surface of life to recognition of something deeper. Scholars like Bentley Layton and Karen King have pointed out that Gnostic salvation is inseparable from knowledge, not intellectual knowledge, but direct insight into one's true nature. And this insight cannot be given. It must be discovered. Now consider the implications of this. If salvation depends on inner realization, then no institution can grant it. No ritual can guarantee it. No external authority can control it. And this changes the entire structure of spiritual power, because it places responsibility directly in the hands of the individual. But with that responsibility comes something else: freedom. And freedom is not always comfortable, because it removes excuses. It removes dependence. It asks you to look directly at yourself, without distraction, without illusion. And for many, this is more challenging than following a defined path. Now pause and reflect on this question. If no one could save you, what would you do differently? Would you begin to observe your thoughts more carefully? Would you question your beliefs more deeply? Would you seek truth, not in what you are told, but in what you experience? This is the path the Gnostic Jesus points toward. Not a path of rejection, but of deeper inquiry. Not a denial of faith, but a transformation of it. Because faith, in this sense, is no longer blind. It becomes clarity, a quiet certainty that arises not from authority, but from direct seeing. And once this shift begins, everything starts to change. Because you are no longer waiting for salvation. You are participating in it. And this leads us to one of the most hidden dimensions of all, the nature of consciousness itself. Because in the next part, we are going to explore how the Gnostic teachings describe the human mind and why understanding it may be the key to everything. What if the greatest barrier between you and truth is not the world, but the way you perceive it? The Gnostic teachings place extraordinary emphasis on consciousness, not as an abstract concept, but as the very lens through which reality is experienced. Because everything you see, everything you believe, everything you fear or desire is filtered through the mind. And yet, most people never question the one thing shaping their entire experience. They question the world. They question others. But rarely do they question the structure of their own perception. In Gnostic texts, there is a recurring idea that the human mind, when unconscious, becomes entangled in illusion. Not because it is weak, but because it identifies with appearances, with forms, with roles, with narratives that are constantly reinforced by the external world. This is what some Gnostic traditions describe as a kind of sleep. Not a literal sleep, but a state of unawareness where one lives without seeing clearly. And the role of the Gnostic Jesus is to interrupt this state, to provoke awareness, to create a fracture in the automatic patterns of thought so that something deeper can emerge. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "Blessed is the one who came into being before coming into being." A paradox, but one that points to a profound insight. It suggests that your true essence exists prior to the identity you have constructed, prior to your name, your history, your beliefs. There is something in you that is not defined by these things, and recognizing this is the beginning of awakening. Philosophers and scholars such as Carl Jung later echoed similar ideas, describing the process of individuation, the journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. While not Gnostic in the strict sense, Jung recognized that many ancient teachings were pointing toward an inner transformation, a realization of a deeper identity beyond the surface personality. Now consider this. If your thoughts shape your perception, and your perception shapes your reality, then what happens when you begin to observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them, a space begins to appear, a subtle distance between you and the constant stream of mental activity. And in that space, something new becomes possible. Clarity, presence, awareness. This is not about stopping thought. It is about no longer being lost in it, because once you see the patterns, they begin to lose their power. Fear is no longer absolute. Desire is no longer blind. And identity becomes something fluid rather than fixed. Now ask yourself, how often are you truly aware of your thoughts as they arise? And how often are you simply carried by them without noticing? This question is not theoretical. It is the doorway. Because the moment you begin to observe rather than react, you step out of the illusion, even if only slightly. And that small shift changes everything. Because in the next part, we are going to uncover one of the most hidden truths of all, the idea of the divine spark, and why recognizing it may be the most powerful realization a human being can have. What if there is something within you that has never been touched by fear, by time, or by the world? Something silent, yet undeniably present. The Gnostic teachings call this the divine spark, a fragment of the ultimate source, not placed outside of you, but within, hidden beneath layers of identity, conditioning, and distraction, yet never lost. In texts like the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of Truth, this idea appears again and again, that within the human being resides a trace of the original fullness, what some traditions call the pleroma, not as a metaphor, but as a reality to be discovered. According to scholars like Kurt Rudolph, this divine spark is the key to understanding Gnostic spirituality. It is what connects the individual to the highest reality, beyond the material world, beyond illusion. But here is the paradox. If this spark is already within you, why do you not feel it? Why does it remain hidden? Because it is not something you can grasp through effort. It is something you recognize when the noise begins to fade, when the constant identification with thought, with roles, with external validation starts to dissolve. The Gnostic Jesus does not give you the spark. He points to it. He reminds you of it. In the Gospel of Thomas, there is a powerful statement. If they say to you, "Where have you come from?" say to them, "We have come from the light, where the light came into being by itself." This is not about physical origin. It is about essence. It is about recognizing that what you are, at the deepest level, is not separate from the source of all things. Now pause and consider this carefully. If there is something within you that is already whole, already connected, already complete, then what exactly are you trying to become? What are you chasing? And who told you that you were lacking? These questions begin to dissolve the illusion of incompleteness, the constant feeling that something is missing. Because from the Gnostic perspective, nothing essential is missing. Only recognition, only awareness. And this realization is not dramatic. It does not arrive with noise or spectacle. It arrives quietly, like a remembering, a subtle shift where something inside you simply knows. Knows without explanation, knows without doubt. And once this knowing begins, it changes how you see everything. The world may look the same, but your relationship to it is no longer the same. Fear loses its authority. External validation loses its grip, and a deeper sense of presence begins to guide your perception. Now ask yourself, have you ever felt a moment, even briefly, where everything seemed complete without needing anything more? A moment where there was no lack, no search, only presence. What if that moment was not accidental? What if it was a glimpse of what has always been there? Because in the next and final part, we are going to bring everything together and reveal the truth that was hidden, not just about Jesus, but about you. What if the truth they hid was never just about Jesus, but about you? After everything we have uncovered, the difference between the Jesus of the Church and the Gnostic Jesus is no longer just a matter of interpretation. It is a matter of direction. One points outward, the other inward. One builds a path based on belief, structure, and authority. The other opens a path of awareness, discovery, and transformation. But here is the final realization, the one most people overlook. These two visions are not simply in conflict. They represent two different stages of understanding. The external path can guide. It can provide structure. It can introduce meaning. But the inner path transforms. It dissolves illusion. It reveals what cannot be taught, only realized. And perhaps this is why the deeper teachings were hidden. Not only because they challenge systems, but because they demand responsibility. Because once you see, you cannot go back. Once you recognize that the truth is not something you are given, but something you uncover, the search changes. You stop asking who is right, and you begin asking, what is real? The Gnostic Jesus was never asking for blind followers. He was calling for conscious beings, for individuals willing to question, to observe, to go beyond appearances. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. This saying, found in the Gospel of Thomas, is not about a distant divinity. It is about presence. It is about recognizing that what you seek is not hidden in some unreachable place. It is here, now, in awareness itself. But awareness requires something rare: stillness, honesty, the courage to face what is within without turning away. Now ask yourself one final question. If the truth has always been within you, what has been keeping you from seeing it? Is it fear, conditioning, distraction, or simply the habit of looking in the wrong direction? Because the moment you turn inward, not in theory, but in direct attention, something begins to shift. Not instantly, not dramatically,